13. Secrets of an international playboy. I had a tough time with girls. The reason is because my mum used to cut my hair. I'm not paying nobody to do what I can do, she said. My mum would put a bowl over my head, grab the clippers, and go around my head one time against the grain, and that was my haircut. Once, I looked in the mirror afterward, and there were these random bald patches. I looked like a Lego figure after you unsnap the hair from it. Meanwhile, she used to go to the hair salon to get shape-ups and trims. To this day, I don't understand this shit. My brother actually began his entire life of crime because he wanted a haircut and couldn't figure out any way to get money for it besides stealing. On my right-hand path, I realized that I could set up a barter system with my mom. The secret was to find something that was more important to her than $12 for a haircut. And that something was my grades. One day, in middle school, when I got good grades on my report card, which for me were B's, my mum gushed. Mum, I'm proud of you. What do you want as a reward? Name anything. Me, all I want is a haircut from a barbershop. Mum, I can just cut it for you. Me, please, I'm begging you, let me go to the barbershop. I just want to experience a professional barber one time. Mum, okay, Kevin, but don't get used to it. The next day, I went to school, saw the popular girl I liked, and with a confidence that only a hairstyle not cut by your mama can bring, said, "Hey." To my complete surprise, she replied, "Hi." That was the first time she ever spoke to me. I got a haircut, I told her, like an idiot. She smiled. And that was enough for me. I decided that looking good made the world revolve around you. To this day, I still remember the name of the guy who cut my hair, Greg. Thank you, Greg. 2 weeks later, the haircut had grown out and I was right back where I started. When I asked my mum for money to get my hair cut, she refused. I'm not giving you $12 for something I can do myself right now. Come over here. It'll just take 5 minutes. That's what I'm afraid of, I muttered as I submitted to another bowl cut. Consequently, I never had girls beating down my locker. I damn sure remember who did have them though, Hakeem. Girls loved Hakeem. And I was pissed off about that until I realized the secret to his success. It was pubic hair. Hey, you got hair on your dick yet, man? Hakeem asked one day. Most guys my age seemed to be sprouting pubic hair and their confidence was growing in tandem. You were no longer a boy once you got that new growth. You were a fucking man. So of course I told him, yeah, I'm already good down there. Let's see, he said. He lowered his waistband and proved that, yes, he did indeed have some fuzz. If I didn't back up my words by flashing some fuzz, Hakeem would tell everyone. My already dismal chances with girls would hit a new low. I had to think quickly. I dropped a notebook on the ground. As Hakeem bent to pick it up, I reached my hand to the back of my head and pulled out a few strands. Then, as Hakeem was standing up, I reached into my waistband and pretended to pull the loose hair out. Oh, Kev's got hair, Hakeem exclaimed. He's got hair. And my middle school life was saved. I ended up doing that maneuver so often in the following years, I'm surprised I had any hair left on my head. How y'all getting it? I kept asking friends, trying to be casual about it. What y'all doing? Putting grease on it or something? I tried everything to spark some growth. I put hair oil on the area. I put shaving cream on it. I put fertilizer on it. I prayed to God. But nothing worked. I didn't get pubic hair until I was almost 18 years old. Being the last person to grow pubic hair in my class was probably the biggest stress I dealt with in my childhood. It was worse than my mum controlling my every movement, worse than my brother getting arrested and joining the military, worse than anything my dad did. And the fucked up thing is, I waited what seemed like my whole life to get pubic hair. Then as soon as I got it, women started saying, you gotta shave that shit off. I guess to be a man, you just gotta be able to prove you can grow it. And once you know you can, you're supposed to get rid of it. Is there a life lesson in this? Probably not. At times, life is random if not downright stupid. 14. Packing that meat. Eventually, I realized it wasn't pubic hair that got you the girls. I'd been so naive. Girls didn't care about that. They cared about things that were more important, things that really mattered, things that made a difference. They cared about big dicks. After hearing two girls talking about the size of Hakim's dick, I leapt into action. The next day, I came to school in my brother's old sneakers. They were 2 sizes too big for me. But I knew that as soon as the girls saw how big my feet were, they'd think about the monster I was packing higher up. Yo, Kev, what's going on? My friend Jabba asked. Your feet are big as shit. Shush, I told him. I'm dealing with it, you know. What you want me to do? I flopped all over school like I was the man that day, except during basketball practice. I couldn't run in those flippers, so my sneakers on the court looked nothing like the ones I wore during school. I hoped no one would notice the difference. But I think they did, because pretty soon everyone started calling me Flip. Fortunately, I have an optimistic disposition. So when fake pubic hair and big shoes didn't get me anywhere with the ladies, I decided to do the one thing that no teenage girl could resist: join a boy band. NKOTB, Boys to Men, New Edition, all these boy bands were poppin'. So I told my friend Jabba that we should be poppin' too. I'm telling you, we'll make it, I elaborated. We're both talented and we got great voices. The first problem was my premise: we weren't talented and we had horrible voices. But we had a great dream, and who's going to say no to a child's dream? The second problem was that between school and all the extracurricular programs my mother had enrolled me in, I had no free time to rehearse. I solved that one by practicing with Jabba in Ms. Davis's yard. We were there nearly every afternoon for a month, very seriously working on the lyrics and choreography of our first hit single. It was a song that we were sure would take the teenage girls of the nation by storm. We stood side by side, then shuffled a step to the right, and I sang Gonna Love You Up. Then we moved back to the center, and he sang Gonna Love You Down. And finally, we shuffled a step to the left and both sang Gonna Love You Always. Oh man, that's it. I clapped him on the back when we completed that song. We're gonna do this. Kevin Jabba album dropping everywhere this summer. I'm gonna get me my own house with all that money, Jabba replied. We probably spent more time bigging each other up than singing. Our album was going to be called Didn't Make It. It was a prophetic title. It seemed like whatever I did to be cool only brought me more ridicule. The problem is that in most cases, what it takes to be cool in middle school is money. And we didn't have much. We couldn't afford the Malcolm X jackets that kids were wearing after the movie came out. We couldn't afford the Air Jordans. We couldn't afford the nice starter jackets. All these phases came and went, and I just watched them pass by. The only thing I had was my personality, and back then, it wasn't enough. I worked my way down from the most popular girls, who were dating the star quarterback or star point guard or track and field star, basically anyone with a word star attached, to the lonely girls who hung out in the library. When I worked up the courage to ask one of the cute but overlooked library girls to a movie, she responded, "No, that's not really my thing. I'm into books." "Of course, I get it," I said, and slunk away. So that was it. I burned through pretty much the entire female population of school. But fortunately, I lived in the city, so there were other options in the neighborhood. My first big crush was a girl named Tamika. She lived in another neighborhood, but would come to visit someone on my block, so I started talking to her. One day my dad stopped by and saw me talking to her. I was so proud. "Meet Dad, I want you to meet Tamika." "Dad, I don't know about this one, Kev. Something about her teeth." "Meet Dad, she's right here." "Dad, all right, all right. Did you at least get your dick wet yet?" "Me, I don't know what you're talking about. Just stop." "Dad, no, you ain't never had your dick wet." "Me, we're gonna go." "Dad, ow, you ain't gonna be no faggot. Show her that long dick." Despite my dad's lack of a filter, I eventually got her phone number and Managed to convince her to go on a date with me. The next problem was my mum. There was no room in her schedule for this date. The only way I could make it work was to play hooky during school. It took me 2 weeks to convince Tamika to ditch her classes too. Once I did, we wandered around my neighborhood talking until someone spotted us, called my mum, and asked, "Is your son supposed to be in school today? Because I think I see him walking down the street right here." She popped up on me and whooped my ass on the spot, flinging me all over the place in front of Tamika. The saddest thing is, it wouldn't be the most embarrassing beating I got from my mum. That would happen the following year, when I started high school. 15. Time traveling. For the first 13 years of my life, I was one of the taller kids in my class. Then in 8th grade, I stopped growing. My peers surpassed me on the height axis until I was the shortest in class, but in my mind, I was still a giant among teenagers. I even thought that just maybe, the NBA was in my future. When freshman year of high school began, a notice went up at George Washington High School. There were going to be tryouts for the varsity basketball team on Wednesday at 6 in the morning. There was nothing I wanted more than to play varsity basketball and get my career started. Though my mum had signed me up for practically every team in a 30-mile radius, she didn't actually care about sports. She just cared about keeping me off the streets and on her schedule. In those days, that schedule included taking the school bus, which didn't pick me up early enough in the morning to get to tryouts. "You're not leaving the house at that hour to make any tryouts," she informed me. "You'd have to catch public transportation. It's not safe that early. You're not doing it." I don't think I'd ever been as mad at her as I was that day. I loved basketball too much to miss my one shot at making the varsity team. So I devised a plan. I studied the bus schedule and determined that the best bus to take was at 4:07 a.m. Then, the night before tryouts, I crept around the house while my mum was sleeping and meticulously set every clock forward by 2 hours. If there was something that had a time on it, from the VCR to her watch, I set it forward. At 4 in the morning, her alarm clock clicked over to 6 a.m. and started buzzing. I was already awake and ready to sprint to the bus stop. "Okay, Mum, I'm going to school." I stepped into my sneakers and stuffed my homework into my book bag. Then I got to that bus stop, made it to tryouts, and gave it my all. By third period, I was feeling pretty proud of myself for pulling this off. I was joking with a friend in history class, waiting for the teacher to enter the room, when I noticed a familiar head on the other side of the glass panel in the classroom door. It was her. There is no fear like the terror I had of my mum in that moment. As I sat there, with my heart clenched and my mouth suddenly dried, the door opened. The principal entered, with my mum right behind him. "Kevin," he said, "your mum is here to pick you up." My classmates were instantly jealous. They thought I was getting to leave school early. As I waved between desks, they all said goodbye and patted me on the back like I was the man. Meanwhile, I was trying not to shit my pants. With every step I took toward that door, I saw my mom's control over her rage slip. By the time I was 2 paces from the door, she had her belt off. My whole body trembled as I took the next step. Suddenly, quack, 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 she started beating my ass in front of the whole class. The kids who had been jealous just a moment before started laughing and making fun of me. I cried up a storm as she whooped me out the door and into the hallway. She was such a high level of pissed off, even the principal was trying to get her to stop. He didn't succeed. My mum beat me all the way out of the building and to the bus stop. Then she calmed down for a moment. But taking a break gave her an opportunity to think again about what I'd done, and a minute later, she had that belt whistling through the air again. Had me at work 2 damn hours early. Quack, quack, wasn't a goddamn soul in sight. Quack, quack. Up to that point, the worst beating I'd gotten was a few years earlier, after my first and last time shoplifting. I'd taken a pack of Starbursts from a store Because all the kids were eating them and I wanted to know what they tasted like. She caught me trying to open one on the train and smacked the hell out of me. Then she made me go back to the store, return the Starbursts, and apologize. As she whacked me the whole time. The fucked up thing about it is I never got to taste a Starburst. When the bus finally arrived, she had to pause for a second to pay the fare. Then she found a reason to get mad at me again. Sit down. Before my butt even landed on the seat, she hit me again and yelled, I said sit. Any excuse there was to hit me, she found it that day. Don't you look at me like that. Quack. Stop crying, boy. Quack. I said stop crying. My dad, despite all the violence I witnessed around him, only hit me one time. And even then, all he did was put his hand on the top of my head and smack his hand. With my mum, on this particular day, it got to the point where she was slapping the shit out of me over things that were out of my control. When we were close to our stop, we got up and walked to the doors. The bus braked and I stood on the steps, waiting for the doors to open. All of a sudden, behind me, she boomed, get off the bus. Quack, quack. The doors weren't even open yet. I was grounded for 3 months after that. Since I'd pretty much been grounded my whole life anyway, I couldn't really complain. Especially since I made the team. 16. Becoming elite. Never quit. That was the message that our varsity basketball coach, Calvin Jones, constantly drilled into our heads. He never got angry and yelled at us like other coaches did. Instead, he related to us and cared for us, and he became a mentor to me and many of the other guys. My goal on the team was to be part of the starting lineup, but there were several players who were much better than me. Coach Jones would constantly tell me not to be comfortable sitting on the bench. But he also refused to let me start out of pity. Instead, he tried to instill in me the will to do better, the will to win, and the will to work hard for all of it. It was effective, at least as far as basketball was concerned. When my mum brought me to work with her on the weekends, I'd go to the open gym and play until she came to get me at 5 o'clock. All that basketball and swimming. Playing in different leagues and gyms, meeting kids of all races and backgrounds, and traveling to so many different places in the state to compete. Probably taught me how to communicate, understand, and get along with all different kinds of people. However, the more I got into basketball, the less excited I got about swim team. Not only had my mum been making me do it for the last 5 years, but in her tireless effort to keep me busy, when they offered a lifeguarding course, she signed me up for that too. I hated swimming, and I decided to stop trying. It was a serious team, which was later the subject of a film, Pride, along with our coach, Jim Ellis. According to him, we were the first black swim team in our league to compete nationally. My teammates were very competitive and were not only winning medals, but getting A's and B's in school. Meanwhile, I was just barely passing classes. My academic philosophy was that less is best. My job was to show up and not fail. So I started applying the same philosophy to swimming. I was there to move my arms and legs in the water and get by. At meets, I'd be the last one flailing in the pool. I'd get out, and no one would care. They'd just be waiting for me to finish so they could start the next race. Of course, my mum responded to this minor act of rebellion perfectly. You wanna go and not try, that's on you, she said after another one of my shitty meets. But you're still gonna go. So you can swim and be good, or you can swim and not be good. But either way, you're still gonna be swimming. I stuck with my plan. Around the pool, they had team pictures from different competitions. There were kids diving off starting blocks, holding up gold medals, and celebrating victories. I'd been on the team longer than most of the other kids, and there was just one photo of me crouching by the side of the pool and adjusting my goggles. I looked awkward and suspicious, like I was cheating by slipping some kind of chemical in my goggles. Everyone used to joke about that picture. I was the joke of the team. After a while, I started to realize that I wasn't hurting my mum by not trying. I was only hurting myself. Everything she did always put me in a position to Recognize that. The feeling of being left out, of watching everyone else celebrate and talk about winning, began to outweigh whatever little satisfaction I took in sucking. So I decided to start trying to become a better swimmer and earn some of those gold medals. Unfortunately, that backfired too. By the end of the season, I started winning races, and my coaches saw potential in me. They moved me up to the highest level they had, the elites. And now, instead of practicing once a day, I was practicing twice a day because these elite motherfuckers were going after college scholarships and training for the Junior Olympics. It was too much swimming. By trying to get out of it, I ended up having to do twice as much of it. Maybe that's another reason I so rarely rebelled against my mum. After every battle for freedom, I somehow ended up with less of it. 17. Getting hard. My mom's plan of keeping me busy eventually backfired in a way she never expected. All those extracurricular athletics made me strong. Eventually, her beatings didn't hurt anymore. I stopped crying like I used to. The whoopings became more about her, to help her feel as if she was doing her job as parent and disciplinarian. Meanwhile, I was starting to have angry outbursts and explosions of temper. I wasn't a little boy anymore, and the degree of restriction she imposed wasn't healthy for a teenager. I had friends on the swim team who were leading responsible lives without parental discipline, and it was time for my mum to let go a little as well. For the most part, I'd lived by her rules and hadn't joined a gang or snatched purses. So I began to advocate for my freedom, telling my mum whenever I could that she needed to start relaxing, that I could stay out of trouble without her help, that I could take care of myself. She didn't take too kindly to my parenting advice. So when she whooped me or yelled at me, I'd wait a few days until it blew over, then readdress why going in a different direction might be more beneficial for both of us. Usually, this only set her off again. One day, she was whooping my ass for having the nerve to tell her how to be a parent. When she got tired from hitting me and paused to catch her breath, I said, "You had enough." I couldn't believe the words that had just come out of my mouth. They signified that something was new, something had changed, the power dynamic was shifting. I knew it. She knew it. And it pissed her off. "Oh, you wanna be a smartass?" She gasped the words between huffs and puffs as she mustered the strength to hit me even harder. She didn't want to show weakness. A few days later, I complained again about her strict schedule, and she raised her fist and punched me in the arm. Her knuckles cracked against my tricep. When I walked away, I saw her shaking her hand in pain. That's when the beating stopped. She continued to give me verbal beatings, but she knew that short of stabbing, shooting, or macing me, there was nothing she could physically do anymore to harm me. As long as you're under my roof, you're under my rules, she reminded me the next time she got upset at me. "Well, I'm gonna get out from under this roof as soon as I can," I shot back. She then made a promise that I held on to like a gold bar for the rest of high school. When you're 18 and you graduate high school, you can do whatever you want. Great. But if you're still living under my roof at that time, you're gonna be going to college. You're not gonna be doing nothing in my house. After that, she started to loosen her controls little by little. I knew that each new freedom was a test, and I'd pass it by showing respect for her rules and gratitude for her leniency. Even though some of these freedoms seemed huge to me at the time, they were more like quarter turns of a screw. Instead of picking me up at Ms. Davis's house, for example, she'd call when she was leaving work and let me walk home on my own to meet her. When she let me go to a friend's birthday party one Saturday night, I felt like a prisoner being allowed into the sunshine for the first time in 15 years. And I made damn sure to get back home on time. I knew if I was late, it might not happen again. 18. My powers of observation amaze even me. Then, one day, we got robbed. The weekend before, my mom and I had been out doing something very rare. Shopping for school clothes. She took me to Burlington Coat Factory and Marshall's to get discounted jeans, shirts, and sweaters. She even got me my first Semi-cool pair of shoes, Eastlands, brown leather boots with nice stitching that everyone was wearing in school. It was one of the greatest days of my teenage life. That Monday, I left Miss Davis's house as usual and walked home. As I was climbing the 31 steps, I looked at our door and it looked back at me. Something seemed off. It was the hinges. They'd been removed. I screamed. Oh, shit. I looked around. No one was in sight. I pulled open the door. Actually, I sort of pulled and lifted, it was more of an obstacle now than a door. I stuck my head in and yelled, "Mum." Now I knew. My mum wasn't there, but I figured that would scare the thieves and murderers that I was sure had invaded my house. After all, nothing scares a grown-ass man more than someone yelling, "Mum," in a whiny voice. I walked inside, still yelling, "Mum." That was my weapon. I don't need no gun. I got my mum. That was when it dawned on me that the apartment only had one door, so where were these criminals gonna run if they heard me and panicked? Straight at me. I stopped yelling. This plan wasn't really well thought out. But you don't plan for these things. They just happen. So I'm walking inside now, slowly, scanning for anything suspicious or out of place. Scanning, searching, examining. The hallway looked like it always looked. No one had taken the ceiling or made the walls wider. I don't know what the fuck I was expecting to see in the hallway. I kept walking, scanning, examining. And then I backtracked and saw it, the stove. There was a pot of half-eaten grits on the stove. I knew it wasn't my mom's because no one leaves a dirty dish in her kitchen. It was now pretty clear what had happened. Someone had broken into my house and cooked grits. I had a cook and run situation on my hands. Suddenly, a new and bigger fear raced through my mind, the sneaky cooking motherfucker could have taken my new Eastlands too. That would be the equivalent today of someone breaking into my house and stealing $500,000 worth of jewelry, which actually happened. Honestly, it would be worse. At least the jewelry was insured. My Eastlands weren't, and I was convinced my previous lack of Eastlands was all that had separated me from every girl I liked in school. I ran to the back room, my heart pounding. There they were, my precious Eastlands. I picked them up just in case someone was hiding and waiting until I left to snatch them. Then I entered my mom's room. Her middle drawer was open, and her stockings, underwear, and bras were on the floor and clearly tampered with. Now I had more than a cook and run situation on my hands. I had a situation on my hands that I didn't even want to think about. That's not shit I ever want to think about. I suddenly remembered that she hid her money in that drawer. So someone had taken our door off the hinges, entered my mom's bedroom, opened the exact drawer where she kept her money, snatched it, and then cooked grits in the kitchen. At least whoever committed this heinous act knew nothing about shoes. Shit, what if they got my new shirts? I ran back to check. My school clothes were still there, so I stuffed them into my book bag just in case the thieves came back for them, because of course that must have been their real objective before they got too hungry to see it through. I ran back to Miss Davis's house and asked if I could use the phone. Once I got my mum on the line, I broke the news. I think we've been robbed. To this day, I still don't know why I used the words "I think." I don't know why I ran back to my babysitter's house either, rather than just use the phone at home. And I don't know why I asked my mum to pick me up instead of meeting her in front of our house. I don't know why I did a lot of things. This was all new to me, okay. It was my first time being robbed. No one gets robbed perfectly the first time. It takes experience to get good at it, to not touch stuff and dust for fingerprints and bring in tracker dogs and do DNA tests on the grits and all the shit that championship level victims do. It was your father. Those were the first words my mum said when she came to get me. She had stopped by the house first. I got something for his ass. She balled up her fist, her face filled with a level of fury I hadn't seen since I'd set the clocks back. She noticed me hugging my bursting full book bag to my chest like my life depended on it and gave me a sympathetic smile. Oh, honey, no one's gonna wanna steal that stuff. She knew everything. That's how good she was. How do you know it was Dad? I was still imagining a cabal of criminals that had followed us home from Burlington Coat Factory. That fool went straight for the middle drawer. Nobody else knows about that. But you, me, your brother, and your father. So who else was it? Your brother's in Hawaii. Okay. People don't just rob you and cook. You bet your ass it was your father. His favorite damn food is grits. She vented on the whole walk home. But I had my Eastlands. I had my new shirts. I had my new jeans. Everything had turned out fine. I called my dad the next day. This was the entirety of the conversation. Me, Mom said you robbed us. Dad, she don't know what she's talking about, boy. Let me call you back. A small part of me believed him, because I didn't think it was possible for my own father to do something so low. I didn't hear from him again until he called. 3 weeks later. Were you at, Dad? I asked. When are you coming to visit? Me. Oh, you know I want to see you, son. I just got a lot going on right now. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Don't you forget about your dad now, you hear? A couple of weeks passed and I didn't see him. He just called to check in on me and promised to see me again. This happened over and over until he stopped calling. Then one afternoon, I finally saw him. I was sitting on the train and my dad walked through the door at the end of the car. I exclaimed, Dad. He looked me dead in the eye, then turned around and ran back into the car he came from. I sat there confused. That night, I wrote my brother a letter. I think I saw Dad on the train and he ran away from me. 2 weeks later, I received my brother's reply, Dude, don't worry about it. Dad's on drugs. He's not thinking right. He didn't mean anything by it. Huh. I felt dizzy and sick to my stomach. At a family party that night, I asked our relatives and friends about my brother's accusation. Evidently, everyone in the world knew this piece of information but me. The world, hey, man, it's true. Your dad's on drugs. Me, why didn't anyone tell me? The world, we're telling you now. He's on drugs, real bad. Me, don't you think that's something I should have known? The world, just don't give him no money, cause if you do, it's going to drugs. Me, did you know Dad was on drugs, Mom? Mom, yeah, I knew. Me, Aunt Patsy. Aunt Patsy, yeah, everybody knows. Now you know too. So don't give him anything. Me, okay. As usual, I shoulder shrugged it. But years later, I had an opportunity to speak with him again about robbing us. The conversation went like this. 19. Truth, Justice, and the Heart Way. The time, the present, Father's Day. The place, Orlando, Florida, vacation rental home. The size, 20,300 square feet, bigger than my childhood home. Writer, maybe you can help solve a mystery. Did you ever break into your son's home and take stuff? Dad, no. Kevin, if my mom were here, she would eye this man down right now. Dad, nah, I didn't do that. Kevin, I'll never forget it. She said, it was your father. Dad, listen, here's the thing, with Nance, anything that was wrong was always me. Kevin, all arrows pointed to you on that one. Who else is gonna come into the house and cook your favorite food? Dad, listen, there's nothing I won't admit because back then it wasn't me, it was that demon. So if I did something, I'd tell you. But ain't nobody gonna beat my butt over something I didn't do. Kevin, come on, Dad. Dad, I ain't do it. The only thing I ever did was back before, with your brother. I brought him home one time and your mom wasn't there. I wasn't gonna leave him in the hall, so I went ahead and took the door off the hinges to let him in. Kevin, to writer. See, he used the same method of getting in. Let me tell you something about my dad. He'll give you every hero story in the world, but we all know the reality of it. Dad, boy, you think people gonna pay you for talking about me like this? Knock yourself out. Ain't nothing wrong with my self-esteem. Kevin. Dad, let me tell you something about this boy here. Nancy sheltered him in his brother. And I understand that. That's part of a mother's love. Me, I knew That I had to get them out in the streets. So they gonna get robbed, they might get beat up, whatever. I wanted them to be exposed, give them some survival skills. That's what I did. And in doing that, they saw some stuff. Kevin, oh, we saw some stuff, alright. Dad, not enough stuff. 20. Freaky tales. Everyone was talking about sex in the gym locker room. They'd done it in the car with this girl at this other girl's house when her parents were out with this one girl during a movie. After a while, I couldn't contain myself. Wait a minute, hold on. Huh. Everybody here done this. I'm the only one who hasn't. I was a sophomore, and it was time to figure out this whole sex thing. I didn't want to be the only virgin in high school. One of my close friends on the basketball team was named Khalil. He was a year older than me, a great player, and, most importantly, popular with the girls. Because I was hanging out with him, other kids thought that I might possibly be cool. And I began to believe that if he was popular with girls, then I could be too. To make that happen, however, I first had to do the one thing that every human being must do at some point in their lives, otherwise they haven't really lived, except myself. I was short. I wasn't good looking. I didn't have nice clothes. I didn't have new sneakers. I was a mama's boy, and my haircuts were pretty damn bad. These were facts, anyone could see them. There was no point in hiding any of it. Or pretending otherwise. So I made the decision to be comfortable with it. As the little guy, you have a choice to make. If you want to be popular, you can be the tough guy and overcompensate for your mini-me self, or you can be the funny guy and accept your size. An added incentive for choosing the latter is that it's hard for someone to punch you while they're laughing. I chose to be the funny guy. Having nothing to prove is the most freeing thing in the world. Rather than constantly defending your ego, you can have a sense of humor about your shortcomings. I was able to make this choice because of my ability to shoulder shrug things. Because shoulder shrugging is different than not caring, it's having perspective. It's looking at a bigger picture instead of being reactive. By having that outlook, I was eventually able to understand that if someone was making fun of my height or clothing, they weren't making fun of who I was. Was what they were saying true? Yes. Did it make me inadequate as a human being? No. Did it really matter then? Hell no. And with that realization, I could laugh at myself too. Most of the star athletes in school had no personality. Hanging out with them wasn't a good time. Because I didn't take myself and life so seriously, girls started to hang around me more. And that's when I realized the fun guy always wins. This is because no matter where you are or what you're doing, if you're with the fun guy, you're gonna have a good time. You could be sitting in an empty room watching television with the fun guy, and it could be one of the best nights of your life. You could go out for a cup of coffee with the fun guy and end up laughing more in 1 hour than you have all year. Even if you're doing your laundry with the fun guy, you're gonna have a great time because he knows the secret to life. You want to know what that secret is? It's 2 words: have fun. You can close this book now. Thank you for reading. Good night. Or you can wait a little to find out how I lost my virginity, because otherwise, a couple of weeks from now, there may be a knock on your door, and a man in a suit may be standing there and saying, for $1 million, tell me how Kevin Hart lost his virginity, and you will not know the answer. It would be a shame to lose that much money just because you decided not to finish a book. Besides, I lost my virginity twice. Her name was Angie. We didn't go to the same school, but she lived in the neighborhood. One day we were in the backyard at Miss Davis's house, and we got to messing around. It was cold outside, and we were both wearing coats. She told me to lie down, and I lowered my pants a little so she could sit on me. Is it in? She asked. I had no idea whether it was in or what it was supposed to feel like. It was cold, and we were wearing tons of clothes, and I couldn't feel a thing. I don't know. Is it? I think so, she replied. Okay. We sat there for a few minutes without moving. Then she stood up, and it was over. I looked down and thought, well, my dick is kinda wet and I didn't pee on myself, so something must have happened. I guess I got my dick wet. I stood up and asked, are we friends? Yeah, we friends. Afterward, I was totally confused. Did we just have sex? Is that what sex is? Like, I must have missed something because it wasn't all that great. I saw Angie 2 weeks later, and we did it in the backyard with our coats on. Again. This time, I made sure it went in. I must have felt it 20 times just to confirm this fact. I even moved around because friends said that's what you were supposed to do, and maybe it didn't count if you weren't moving around. The first time, I couldn't tell whether we did it or not. This time, I was certain. We did it. So I double lost my virginity. I had to lose it twice just to make sure. Not long after that, word about her being with different guys got out in the neighborhood, and people started to say mean stuff about Angie. She always liked me because I never spoke about our business or said anything hurtful about her. People do a lot of things to make life hard for themselves, but one of the stupidest is guys who desperately want sex, talking shit about the women most likely to give it to them. Not long afterward, I discovered that a couple of girls in school actually liked me, which of course always makes more girls like you because it puts you in the category of guys it's okay to like. Next, I found out that I was one of the guys who girls were passing notes about and talking in the bathroom about. It took me a while to comprehend that even though I wasn't tall or good looking, women were still attracted to me. And that little boost of confidence actually made me get better looking. I held my head up a little higher, pushed my chest out a little more, became a little less anxious and a little more self-assured. Fortunately, around the same time all this was happening, my mum made a big change in my life. Because I had been respectful and obedient with the small windows of freedom she'd given me, she decided that at age 16, I didn't need a babysitter anymore. I no longer had to go to old Miss Davis's house after school. I could come home on my own. Sometimes I'd have 3 hours alone at home, and this allowed me to invite company over after school and get myself situated to do the do. My move was to sit on the bed with a girl and say, let me give you a massage. If I felt she wasn't ready yet, we'd watch a movie, which I hoped not to finish. I was consistent. It was the same moves every time. However, it wasn't just about the sex. I usually liked her and hung out with her afterward and kept seeing her. If it ended, it was always because she got tired of me and wanted to move on. I was never the type of guy who got angry or upset about a breakup. This is all part of the plan, I think. Let's see what happens next. 21. A HART family reunion. While my brother was in the army in Oklahoma, something went wrong. During a drill, artillery fire accidentally overshot a target and hit a formation of soldiers. 3 people were killed and 23 were injured. That was the moment when I learned that love is stronger than anger, that family is stronger than stubbornness. Because my family came back together. My mum saw the article about it and, for the first time since he left, picked up the phone and called my brother. They didn't speak a lot after that, but when my brother called to tell her that she was about to become a grandmother, their relationship fully resumed. My brother had met a single mother in Hawaii and grown close to both her and her daughter. He'd become a father of sorts to the daughter, and had gotten her mother pregnant and was about to marry her. He flew us out there for the birth of his daughter. It had been just me and my mum for so long, the 2 of us against the world, and now here we with the 5 of us, including my brother's new wife and stepdaughter, celebrating the arrival of a 6th. After hanging out with my brother as he showed me around Oahu and took me to basketball games, plus becoming an uncle all of a sudden, I felt like my small world had expanded a little. Eventually, my brother moved back to Philly with his wife, daughter, and stepdaughter. He had left a juvenile delinquent and returned a responsible man. The military and fatherhood had changed him. He got an apartment, found work cutting hair, and started saving to open his own barbershop. In the meantime, he Found our dad and started working to build a relationship with him. He'd known our father in the good days before the crack when dad was buying presents with money he'd legitimately worked for. To him, dad was Superman until he found his kryptonite. When my brother saved enough money, he rented a storefront and started setting up his barbershop. My dad needed money, and he'd been a carpenter and electrician before, so Kenneth hired him to do the electrical work and remove one of the walls. I'd drop by on weekends and see my brother and father working together. My brother was grateful for all the help dad was providing, but more importantly, he was excited to be close to him again. The family was coming back together. My dad looked ragged and weak, but the work seemed to be making an honest man out of him. As a bonus for me, once my brother started serving customers, I wouldn't have to get haircuts from my mum anymore. Then, 3 days before my brother's barbershop was set to open, I stopped by. And it looked like I'd gone back in time by a month. The place was empty. My brother was pacing back and forth, out of his mind, hysterical. Dad had to fucking do this, he fumed. He had to. Do what? As I looked around, it dawned on me. My brother didn't have to say anything else. My dad had stolen everything, from the smallest set of clippers to the biggest floor hair dryers. Everything. We knew it was him because he hadn't shown up to work that day and wasn't answering his phone. He'd disappeared. I know where to find him, Kenneth said. There was an area known as the Badlands where junkies and crackheads went to score and get high. We ran around the corner to get into my brother's car. It was a Pontiac, but my brother called it the AC because he wanted everyone to think it was an Acura. However, the AC was gone. Dad had stolen the car too. We asked some of the employees hanging around the shop to give us a ride to the Badlands, but we got the same reaction from everyone: I'm not fucking going down there, man. Spoon crazy. Finally, a friend of my brother's named Phil agreed to drive us. We got into his car and sped to 2nd Street. The whole time, my brother was freaking out. 1 minute he'd be convincing himself it wasn't dad, that maybe we were wrong and jumping to conclusions. The next minute, he was fuming: I give him a chance, I give him a job, and he steals everything from me. How could he do this? What are you gonna do when you find him? I asked. I was worried about both of them. Look, it's just about getting confirmation that it's really him, finding the stuff, and getting it back. We drove around the area until my brother spotted the AC parked on a side street with 2 people in the backseat. I'll never forget the pain that shot through my brother's face in that moment. Some part of him, that little boy who'd looked up to his dad, died. My brother got out of the car and walked up to the AC. My dad was in the backseat with a woman, and they were high as fuck. Kenneth was crushed on a deep soul level. What the hell? He exclaimed through the window. My dad opened the door, told the woman, stay right here, bitch, and then turned to my brother. We wondered if he was going to beg for forgiveness or deny everything. He did neither. It's about time you showed the fuck up, he said, as if he were angry at my brother. This time, it was my brother's turn to say, what? This raggedy ass car of yours done ran out of gas. He then jumped out of the car, slammed the keys down on the roof, and started to walk away. Where's all my stuff? My brother called after him, in disbelief. I ain't got your stuff, Dad replied without turning back. Your stuff's gone. And he kept on walking. My brother was hurt, he was angry, he was ashamed. But he wasn't crazy, so he didn't go after Dad. As he told me later, he's the same motherfucker who sicked a dog on me over a basketball game, so I had no doubt he'd stab me over this situation. As we sat in the car afterward in shock, my brother saw someone running across the street with a blow dryer from the shop. My brother had a hard time accepting what had happened to him. Like my mum, he had learned to hold grudges, and it was years before he was willing to let go of that anger and speak to Dad again. That was understandable. It was one thing for my dad to allegedly steal from Mum, who was struggling to make ends meet and take care of their youngest son, but this wasn't just money he took from his son, this was his son's dream. That's the power of addiction. It is stronger than family, honor, and morality. Dad disappeared after that, and my brother managed to get back on his feet. Despite the betrayal, he called in every favor he'd ever been owed, got his employees to agree to defer pay, borrowed money, and got his barbershop open. A couple of weeks later. Meanwhile, I was a senior in high school, and I thought I was outgrowing the need for parenting. I felt like I was getting strong and confident enough to carry the world on my shoulders. Unfortunately, the world turned out to be a little heavier than I thought. 22. Inside the mind of a super genius. A B. A C. A D. That was my plan, because everyone knows that repeating this pattern of answers will hack any multiple choice test. This test happened to be the SAT. It was pretty important. It was going to determine my future, so I didn't want to take any chances. That's why I didn't study. I was going to ace this test with cleverness, stay one step ahead, take the shortcut to success. Hard work was for basketball. In academics, less was best. Besides, I had more important things to do. The SAT was happening at 11 in the morning, and my friends from swim team were going to Six Flags amusement park at noon. It was a 3-hour test, so I had to somehow finish it in less than an hour if I wanted to ride the Batman roller coaster. I wasn't concerned with college anyway. Turning 18, graduating, and being free, those were the things that concerned me. I could have gone to a pen on a scholarship. My mom was now a computer analyst with her own office there, but I told her I wasn't interested. I ain't going there. I'll be 18. I can do what I want, like you said. It's an Ivy League school. You can go there and get hired for any job you want afterward. I get it, but I don't even know if college is for me, Mom. The last thing I wanted was 4 more years of being under Mom's supervision at home and at school. So what are you gonna do, Kev? Something else. Like what? I'll figure it out on my own. I didn't have the heart to say it, but in that very conversation I had fulfilled my childhood dream, to be able to finally tell Mom, I'm grown, I ain't doing that. Those 6 words were the sum total of my ambition. If there was anything she wanted me to do after graduation, it wasn't going to happen, simply because she wanted me to do it. So I sat in the testing room of George Washington High School in Philadelphia with my trusty 2 pencil, and I whipped through that test. I only opened the booklet for show. 20 minutes after the test began, I stood up, handed in my answer sheet, and walked out of that room, to the amazement of my classmate. In fact, I didn't just walk. I strutted. I felt good about it. At Six Flags, I bragged to my friends about how good I did on that test. They were serious about getting into good colleges and had already taken the SAT, so they were excited for me. When I returned home, my mom asked me how I did. Great. I told her. I know it. That's good, she said, and meant it. It turned out that I nailed it, 790 verbal and 780 math. I was going to Harvard. Actually, that's not what happened. If you believe that, then you probably have a gambling problem. My odds of doing well on that test with that stupid system were abysmal. I got something like 400 in verbal and 350 in math. That's not much better than what someone gets for just putting their name on the paper. My mom was disgusted with me. You said you got this, but you didn't even try, she scolded. You know how hard I worked to get you the best life and the best opportunities, and you're taking them for granted. I'm disappointed in you. You're better than this. Her reaction hurt me more than the test results. She'd sacrificed so much for me, and I'd repaid her with apathy, cockiness, and ingratitude. There was no way to think or talk or joke myself out of this. I'd fucked up. As the months passed, I looked around and saw many kids my age, especially on the swim team, were celebrating their success. They'd gotten combined scores as high as 1500. They were stoked that their top choice colleges would be getting these test results. Me, what do you mean your colleges are getting these scores? Teammates, the colleges we applied to, they get the scores directly. Me, you applied to colleges. Teammates, yeah, months ago. Didn't you apply anywhere? Me, shit, I didn't know the deadline already passed. You think I shoulda done it? Teammates, don't worry about it. Me, why can't I late apply or something? Teammates, no, but it doesn't matter. With your scores, no one's gonna accept you anyway. As graduation drew closer and my teammates started getting college acceptance letters, I felt lower and lower. When family members asked what my plan was for after graduation, I couldn't answer them. My entire plan had been just to be free of my mother's rules. I had no plans beyond that. I hadn't sent out a single college application. I bullshitted my way through the SAT. I'd never really considered the future. Now I didn't have one. The lesson that I drew from this at the time was that I should have tried harder. I should have taken school more seriously. I should have had a plan like everyone else. I still feel that way. But there's an additional lesson that I get from it now. It's never too late to start caring. My future was out there. It was just waiting for me to find it. And the challenge was not to give up on myself just because it seemed like everyone else was pulling ahead of me and leaving me further and further behind in the months that followed. That's the test that each of us faces in life. Can you fail and still be strong? Can you not fit in and still accept yourself? Can you lose everything and still keep searching? Can you be in the dark and still believe in the light? Because no matter how low you go and how lost you feel, there is always tomorrow. And tomorrow just may be the day when you get lifted up and find your way. There is just one thing that tomorrow demands of you to make this happen. That you never stop believing in your power to create a better day. This way, when your best possible future comes looking for you, almost always at a time and in a place you least expect it, you will be able to recognize its face and respond to its call. I know this to be true because although I never saw it coming, even when it came, it's exactly what happened to me. Life lessons from work. People with calluses work hard, but some people with soft hands work even harder because they got themselves to a level where they can take care of their hands.